4-year-old homeless girl finds millionaire with clothes on fire, but 2 minutes later, she does something that shocks everyone. Watch until the end, you won't regret it. Comment what you think will happen, your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. The scorching September sun mercilessly beat down on the dusty streets of Havenwood, Arizona, where the heat seemed to melt even the most resilient hopes. Among the narrow alleyways that cut through downtown, a tiny figure moved with the agility of someone who had learned to survive where others merely passed by unnoticed. Wren, just 4 years old, had tangled dirty brown hair and large eyes that reflected a disturbing intelligence for someone so young. Her clothes, a faded and ripped blue sundress, told the story of months living on the streets after being abandoned by her addict mother, who had once promised to return for her. On that sweltering afternoon, the girl crouched behind Sal's bakery, carefully rummaging through the trash, looking for any bread that could still be salvaged. It was a routine she had mastered perfectly. She knew how to distinguish between what was just stale and what was spoiled. She knew the times when each establishment discarded its products. And above all, she knew how to remain invisible to the eyes of adults who might try to help her in ways she feared more than hunger itself. Her small fingers found half a sandwich wrapped in paper, still relatively fresh. Patty, the 38-year-old baker who worked there, always deliberately left some better items on top of the trash. Wren knew this, just as she knew that the kind woman watched her from the kitchen window, pretending not to notice her daily presence. It was as she was carefully unwrapping the sandwich that desperate screams echoed from the parking lot of the small motel across the street. They were cries of genuine terror, unlike those of the drunks who occasionally fought in the park, or the merchants arguing over debts. Wren dropped her precious meal and ran towards the noise, her bare feet slapping against the hot asphalt. Rounding the corner, she was confronted with a scene that made her stop for a moment. An elegant man, wearing an expensive grey suit that was now on fire, was rolling on the ground, desperately trying to put out the flames consuming his clothes. Beside him, a silver luxury car was engulfed in flames, the result of a fuel leak that had accidentally ignited when the man had tried to check something in the engine. The smell of burning gasoline and scorched fabric filled the air. For a moment, Wren hesitated. Men in suits always made her tremble, always bringing fragmented and confusing memories that she preferred to keep buried deep in her child's mind. But the cries of pain were real, and something inside her, a pure kindness that even months of abandonment had not been able to corrupt, made her act. Her eyes quickly scanned the surroundings and found a bucket of dirty water that someone had left near the entrance to the motel. Without hesitating, the girl grabbed the bucket with both hands. It was too heavy for her, but the adrenaline gave her strength, and ran to the man on fire. "Hold still!" she shouted with her thin but determined voice, dumping all the water on Bennett Sterling, owner of a regional chain of supermarkets, who at that moment was closer to death than he had ever been in his 52 years of life. The dirty water, mixed with remnants of soap and a few leaves, immediately extinguished the flames on the man's clothes. Bennett rolled a few more times on the ground, panting, before managing to sit up and look up, searching for who had been his savior. His eyes met those of a small, dirty child who was watching him with a serious and concerned expression. Wren checked if there was still fire somewhere, ready to act again if necessary. Her small hands were still holding the empty bucket, and she was breathing rapidly from the effort. You saved me," murmured Bennett, his voice hoarse from the smoke. He tried to get up, but the pain from the burns on his arm and back made him groan and fall back to the ground. "You're hurt," said Wren, her voice carrying a strange maturity. "You need to go to the hospital." Bennett looked at that child who had just saved his life and felt something he couldn't name. It wasn't just gratitude, it was a mixture of amazement, curiosity, and a strange sense of familiarity, as if he were facing something precious that he had lost a long time ago. "What's your name, girl?" he asked, trying to smile despite the pain. Wren stared at him for a few seconds, her big eyes studying every detail of the man's face. It was as if she were recording his image in her memory, a habit she had developed to recognize people who might represent danger or safety. "Wren," she replied simply. "Wren, what a pretty name." Bennett rummaged in the pocket of his scorched jacket and pulled out a leather wallet. "Let me reward you. You saved my life. How much do you want?" The girl's reaction was immediate and surprising. Wren took several steps back, her eyes filling with a fear that she had not shown even in the face of the fire. The offer of money had awakened something deep and disturbing in her memory. "I don't want anything," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't want anything from you." Before Bennett could respond or understand what had caused such a change in the child's behavior, Wren turned and ran through the alleyways of the city, disappearing among the back streets as if she knew every stone, every corner, every possible hiding place. Bennett sat there on the hot ground, watching the place where she had disappeared, completely intrigued. In his entire life as a successful businessman, he had never met someone who refused money so categorically, especially a child who clearly lived in extreme need. When the fireman and the ambulance finally arrived, called by Patty, who had witnessed everything from the bakery window, Bennett was taken to the hospital to treat his superficial burns. But throughout the journey, and even during medical care, his thoughts could not stray from that extraordinary girl who had saved his life without expecting absolutely anything in return. 3 days had passed since the incident, and Bennett Sterling couldn't get the image of that courageous girl out of his head, the one who had disappeared like a ghost after saving his life. The burns on his arm and back were healing well, but there was a growing restlessness in his chest that no medication could cure. Sitting in his luxurious office, with a panoramic view of downtown Havenwood, Bennett drummed his fingers on the mahogany desk while watching the movement of the streets below. His businesses, a chain of 5 supermarkets that served the entire region, functioned perfectly under the management of his competent team, but for the first time in years, he couldn't concentrate on the financial reports that used to absorb all his attention. "Mr. Sterling," the voice of his secretary, Mrs. Davies, brought him back to reality. "Mr. Davies is here for the monthly numbers meeting." Bennett nodded, adjusting his tie. Harvey Davies, his 45-year-old accountant, was a meticulous man who had been taking care of the company's finances for over a decade. Thin, always wearing impeccable dark suits and gold-rimmed glasses, Harvey possessed a cold and calculating personality that, although efficient in business, had always left Bennett slightly uncomfortable. "Bennett, how are the burns?" asked Harvey as he entered, carrying a black briefcase full of documents. "I heard it was a pretty serious accident." "I'm fine, thanks for your concern." Bennett gestured for him to sit down. "And how are our numbers this month?" Harvey opened the briefcase with precise movements, spreading spreadsheets on the table. "Excellent as always, revenue 12% above the previous month, costs controlled, healthy margins." He paused, his small eyes watching Bennett over his glasses. "But I heard some interesting comments in town." "What kind of comments?" "They say a street girl saved your life, an abandoned child, living like an animal on the streets." Harvey adjusted his glasses, his cold smile not reaching his eyes. "It must have been a striking experience." Bennett felt a pang in his chest at hearing Wren described that way. "She was very brave. She saved my life without thinking twice. I imagine you must be grateful." "Very grateful." Harvey closed one of the folders slowly. "People comment that you tried to reward her, but she refused. How peculiar." There was something in Harvey's tone that bothered Bennett deeply, but he couldn't quite identify what it was. They finished the meeting quickly, and as soon as the accountant left, Bennett made a decision that would completely change his routine. That same afternoon, wearing casual clothes so as not to attract attention, Bennett began to walk the streets of the city that he knew only from the perspective of his air-conditioned car. It was like discovering a parallel world that had always existed there, but that he had never really seen. It was at Sal's bakery that he found the first clue. Patty, the baker who had witnessed the accident, was preparing bread when he entered. "Mrs. Patty," he greeted respectfully. "I would like to talk about that girl, Wren. Do you know her?" Patty stopped kneading the dough and looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and maternal protection. "Why do you want to know about her, Mr. Sterling? She's not an ordinary child, you know. She saved my life. I just want to make sure she's okay, maybe help her in some way." The baker wiped her hands on her apron, her kind eyes studying the businessman's sincere face. "Wren shows up here almost every day looking for food in the trash. I always leave some good things on top, pretending it's my carelessness." She sighed. "But she's a strange girl, Mr. Sterling. Very intelligent for her age. She remembers everyone she sees." "What do you mean?" "She has a memory that isn't normal. Once she perfectly described a man who had passed by on the street weeks before, even the clothes he was wearing. It's like she has a camera in her head." Patty lowered her voice. "And she's afraid of men in suits. She trembles like a leaf in the wind when she sees one." Bennett's heart sank. "Why do you think that is?" "I don't know. But she must have lived through bad things before she showed up here. She's been wandering the streets alone for about 6 months. In the beginning, I tried to take her to the authorities, but she's too smart. She knows every alley, every hiding place in this city better than any adult." Bennett thanked her for the information and left the bakery with his mind racing. For the rest of the afternoon, he visited the places that Patty had mentioned as spots where Wren used to appear. The Central Park, the back of the municipal market, the small church on Flower Street. It was near the end of the day, when the shadows began to lengthen across the streets, that he finally saw her. Wren was crouching behind a closed fruit stand, meticulously organizing some objects in a small cardboard box. There were empty cans, pieces of clean cloth, a few coins, and what appeared to be a small notebook. Bennett watched fascinated as she worked. Each movement was calculated, each object had its specific place in the box. It was an organizational system that demonstrated impressive intelligence for a 4-year-old living on the streets. When Wren finished organizing her belongings, she carefully carried the box and began to walk towards a narrow alley. Bennett followed her at a distance, staying in the shadows. She was heading towards what seemed to be one of her hiding places, a small space between 2 old buildings, protected by pieces of wood and tarpaulin that she had ingeniously arranged to create a makeshift shelter. It was when she was entering her refuge that something terrible happened. A man in a dark suit, whom Bennett had not noticed before, appeared at the entrance to the alley. Wren saw him and immediately dropped her box, retreating to the back wall, trembling violently. "Easy, girl," said the man in a voice that was too smooth. "I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to talk." Bennett felt all his instincts sharpen. There was something deeply wrong with that situation. The man was slowly approaching Wren, who was now huddled in the corner, her big eyes full of absolute terror. "You've grown, haven't you?" continued the man. "But I still recognize you. I still remember you at the Blue House." Wren emitted a sound that was almost a moan of dread, and it was then that Bennett decided to act. He stepped out of the shadows and entered the alley with firm steps. "Is everything all right here?" he asked loudly. Positioning himself between the man and the child, the man in the suit turned sharply, clearly irritated by the interruption. "It's none of your business. I'm just talking to an acquaintance." "Judging by her reaction, it doesn't seem like a very friendly conversation," replied Bennett, maintaining an educated but firm tone. The man studied Bennett for a few seconds, his eyes calculating the possibilities. Finally, he adjusted his jacket and gave a cold smile. "We'll talk better another day," he murmured to Wren before leaving the alley, leaving behind an almost palpable tension. Bennett turned to Wren, who was still trembling against the wall. Her eyes were fixed on the floor, and she was breathing irregularly. "He's gone," said Bennett softly. "You're safe now." Wren looked up slowly, and for the first time since he had met her, Bennett saw tears running down her dirty face. But when she recognized him, something changed in her expression. Surprise replaced fear. "You're the fireman," she whispered. "Yes, I am, and you are Wren, the brave girl who saved my life." They stared at each other in silence for a few seconds, and Bennett felt that there was something more to that meeting, something that went beyond coincidence. Wren seemed to be making an important internal decision. "Thank you," she finally said, "for making him go away." "Who was that man?" Wren looked away, picking up her box of belongings that had fallen to the ground. "Someone bad from the past." At that moment, watching that extraordinary child reorganize her few belongings with still trembling hands, Bennett understood that he had become involved in something much bigger and more complex than he had imagined, and that he could not simply forget Wren and continue with his life as if nothing had happened. In the weeks that followed the disturbing encounter in the alley, Bennett developed a secret routine that not even his secretary knew about. Every afternoon, after finishing his appointments at the office, he would exchange his suit for casual clothes and roam the streets of the city, no longer looking for Wren directly, but observing from afar, making sure she was safe. What he discovered during these observations left him simultaneously impressed and concerned. Wren had created a true survival system that rivaled any military strategy. She had at least 4 different hiding places that Bennett managed to identify, changing locations every 2 nights, following a pattern that only she understood. Even more impressive was how she had completely mapped the city. Wren knew the exact times when each establishment discarded food. She knew which merchants were friendly and which she should avoid. She had escape routes planned for every dangerous situation. For a 4-year-old child, she demonstrated a planning ability that bordered on the extraordinary. During one of these afternoons of observation, Bennett noticed that Wren had developed a peculiar relationship with the stray animals. There was a caramel-colored mutt that followed her at a distance, like a silent bodyguard. Wren always shared her food with him, and in return, the animal barked whenever strangers got too close to her hiding places. It was on a rainy Thursday that Bennett witnessed something that completely changed his perception of the girl's intelligence. Wren was sitting on the covered porch of the church on Flower Street, sheltering from the rain, when a young nun approached her. Sister Hope, 29 years old, was new to the city. She had arrived only 2 months ago to work with abandoned children, a mission she had embraced after a previous life as a lawyer in Phoenix. Her brown hair was always tucked under her simple veil, and her green eyes reflected a gentle but unwavering determination. "Hi, little one," said Sister Hope, sitting carefully next to Wren. "You come here often, don't you?" Wren studied her for a few seconds, her big eyes processing every detail of the nun's appearance. "You're new," she said finally. "You arrived here on July 23rd, in a blue minivan, carrying 2 brown suitcases and a box of books." The accuracy of the description left Sister Hope speechless. How can you remember so many details?" "I remember everything I see," replied Wren naturally, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "It's useful for knowing if people are dangerous or not." "And am I dangerous?" Wren tilted her head, observing her seriously. "No. You have gentle hands and smile with your eyes. Dangerous people don't do that." Sister Hope felt her heart ache at the maturity of that child. "What's your name?" "Wren." "Wren? What a pretty name. Are you hungry?" The girl hesitated. "I'm always hungry, but I don't accept food if they want to take me somewhere afterwards." "I'm not going to take you anywhere you don't want to go," the nun promised. "How about I bring food right here so we can talk?" During the next 2 hours, Bennett watched from afar one of the most extraordinary conversations he had ever witnessed. Sister Hope brought bread, fruit, and juice, and the two talked on the church porch while the rain fell softly around them. What impressed Bennett the most was how Wren constantly tested the nun. She asked seemingly innocent questions that actually verified whether the woman was being sincere, observed every reaction, every gesture. It was like watching a small detective at work. "Why do you want to help me?" Wren asked at one point. "Because every child deserves care and protection," replied Sister Hope, "and because I see something special in you. Everyone says that before they try to hurt me." The nun stopped eating and looked directly at Wren. "Who tried to hurt you, honey?" Wren looked away, her small fingers playing nervously with the hem of her dress. "People who wear nice suits and speak sweet words." Sister Hope immediately understood that she was facing a deeply traumatized child, but she also realized that pressing for details would be counterproductive. "I understand, and I promise I will never try to force you to do anything you don't want to do." It was at this moment that something extraordinary happened. Wren took out a small, worn notebook from her pocket, opened it to a specific page, and showed it to the nun. It was a drawing made with a pencil found in the trash, the face of Sister Hope, drawn with impressive accuracy for a 4-year-old. "I draw all the people I know," explained Wren, "to remember if they are good or bad. And am I on the page of good people?" "I'm still deciding," replied Wren with brutal honesty, "but you have a real smile. That's a good sign." When the rain stopped and Wren prepared to leave, Sister Hope made a proposal. "Wren, how about I come here every Thursday afternoon? We can talk, eat something, no pressure, no obligations." The girl considered the proposal seriously. "And if I decide you're dangerous? Then you stop coming and I respect your decision." Wren nodded slowly. "Okay." That same night, Bennett was at home, a luxurious but cold apartment in downtown, when he received an unexpected call from Harvey. "Bennett, sorry to bother you so late," said the accountant, his voice carrying a concern that sounded false to the businessman's ears. "But I need to talk to you about some developments in the business." "What kind of developments?" "I'd rather not discuss it over the phone. Can it be at your office tomorrow morning? It's urgent." Bennett agreed, but something in Harvey's tone left him uneasy. He spent the whole night thinking about the conversation, alternating between concerns about the business and thoughts about Wren. There was something connecting these two aspects of his life, but he still couldn't identify what it was. The next morning, Harvey arrived at the office earlier than usual, carrying an even bulkier briefcase than usual. His habitually cold face was tense, and he avoided direct eye contact. "Bennett, I discovered some irregularities in the accounts," he began, spreading documents on the table. "Nothing that compromises the company yet, but, well, it could be a problem if it's not resolved quickly." "What kind of irregularities?" Harvey pointed to several spreadsheets, discrepancies in cash reports, some suppliers with questionable documentation, transfers that could be interpreted as suspicious by the tax authorities. Bennett examined the papers, but his business experience did not identify anything obviously wrong. "Harvey, you've been taking care of these accounts for over 10 years. How could this have gone unnoticed?" "That's exactly why I'm worried," replied the accountant, adjusting his glasses nervously. "If the auditors decide to investigate further, they may find unfavorable interpretations." "What are you suggesting?" Harvey leaned over the table, lowering his voice. "That maybe it's time for you to reduce some activities that might attract unnecessary attention." "What activities?" "Well, I heard that you've been spending a lot of time on the streets lately. People comment that you're looking for a certain child. This could be misinterpreted, especially if the auditors start investigating your personal life." Bennett felt the blood run cold in his veins. There was something deeply threatening in the way Harvey spoke, a subtext that he was beginning to understand. "Are you blackmailing me, Harvey?" The accountant feigned surprise. "Of course not. I'm your friend, Bennett. I'm just trying to protect you and the company. But if people start speculating about your new activities, well, you know how gossip is in a small town." "And what exactly do you suggest I do?" Stay focused on business, avoid behaviors that could be misinterpreted, and maybe consider an external financial consultancy to resolve these irregularities. I have some contacts who could help for a monthly fee, of course. At that moment, Bennett understood that he had fallen into a carefully planned trap. Harvey was using his concern for Wren as leverage for some corrupt scheme. And even worse, he was threatening both his reputation and the security of the company he had built over decades. "How much?" asked Bennett, his voice icy. "Thinking about the good of the company, let's say 15,000 a month would be a reasonable investment in our fiscal security. $15,000 a month. A fortune for most people. But for Bennett, it represented more than money. It represented his freedom being bought by a man who had abused his trust for more than a decade. "I need to think about it," said Bennett finally. Sure. But don't take too long. You know how these tax issues can get complicated quickly." After Harvey left, Bennett was alone in his office, contemplating the view of the city below. Somewhere in those streets, a 4-year-old girl fought every day for survival, using only her intelligence and courage. And there he was, a 52-year-old man with all the resources in the world, being blackmailed by a corrupt subordinate. At that moment, he made a decision that would change everything. He would not allow Harvey to use his concern for Wren as a weapon against him. And somehow, he would find a way to protect both the girl and his company, even if it meant risking everything he had built. During the 3 months that followed, Bennett's life turned into a dangerous game of chess, where each move could mean the difference between freedom and complete ruin. He had decided to pay Harvey's blackmail temporarily while he looked for a way to reverse the situation, but each monthly transfer of $15,000 was like a stab in his dignity. To make matters worse, Harvey had begun to make increasingly audacious demands. He was not content only with the money. Now he wanted to influence the company's decisions, suggesting specific suppliers, pressing for changes in contracts, and interfering in personnel management. "Bennett, we need to talk about some adjustments in the payroll," said Harvey during one of the monthly meetings, his cold smile becoming increasingly arrogant. "Some employees are earning more than they should, considering our delicate fiscal situation." "Which employees?" asked Bennett, although he knew he wouldn't like the answer. "Mrs. Mallory, from internal accounting. She's been working here for 15 years, but maybe it's time for a renewal. And Mr. Davies, from the warehouse, too high a salary for someone his age." Bennett felt the outrage grow in his chest. Mallory and Davies were exemplary employees, honest people who had dedicated their lives to the company. Firing them would be a betrayal of everything he believed in. "I will not fire loyal employees to satisfy your greed," he replied firmly. Harvey adjusted his glasses, his tone becoming more threatening. "It's not greed, Bennett. It's necessity. You know what can happen if certain information reaches the competent authorities. And don't forget, your personal reputation is also at stake. People are already commenting about your obsession with a certain street child." The threat was clear. Harvey would not hesitate to destroy both the company and Bennett's personal life if he didn't get what he wanted, but the businessman had spent the last few months doing his own investigation, discreetly hiring a private investigator to investigate his accountant's past. Meanwhile, on the streets of the city, Wren developed a strange routine that intrigued everyone who observed her. Every Thursday, she appeared punctually at the church for her meeting with Sister Hope, but beyond that, she had begun to frequent specific places always at the same times, as if she were following an invisible schedule. Patty, from the bakery, was the first to notice the pattern. "Sister Hope," she said during one of the nuns' visits to pick up bread for needy children, "that girl, Wren, has been doing strange things." "What kind of things?" "She stands still in specific points of the city, always at the same time. Yesterday I saw her in front of the bank at 9 in the morning, standing like a statue, watching who went in and out. The day before yesterday it was at City Hall. Same behavior." Sister Hope frowned. During the months of conversation with Wren, she had realized that the girl possessed an almost adult intelligence hidden behind her fragile appearance. But this new behavior worried her. Did she say anything about what she was doing? Only that she was collecting important information. What information does a 4-year-old need to collect? The following Thursday, Sister Hope decided to address the issue directly. Wren arrived at the church punctually, carrying her box of belongings and the worn notebook where she drew the people she knew. "Wren, can I ask you a question?" said the nun after they shared a simple snack. "Patty told me that you have been observing some places in the city. Why?" The girl raised her eyes from the drawing she was making, the face of a man that Sister Hope did not recognize. "Because I need to understand how the bad people connect." "What bad people?" Wren turned a few pages of the notebook, showing drawings of several men. They all wore suits. They all had severe expressions captured with impressive precision. "This one here," she pointed to one of the drawings, "is the man who scared me in the alley. He shows up at the bank every Monday at 9 o'clock. And this other one," she turned the page, "works at City Hall, but they meet at Moe's Bar every Friday at 5 in the afternoon." Sister Hope felt a chill down her spine. "Wren, how do you know all this?" "Because I watch, and because I remember everything." The girl closed the notebook carefully. "My mom always said bad people work together, like evil ants. They make plans together. And you think these men are making bad plans? I know they are. And I know it has to do with me." At that moment, Sister Hope understood that she was facing a much more complex and dangerous situation than she had imagined. Wren was not simply surviving on the streets. She was conducting her own investigation into people who posed a threat to her. "Wren, have you told this to anyone else?" "To the fireman." "Who?" "The man I saved. He protected me from the bad man in the alley. Sometimes he shows up from afar, thinking I don't see, but I always see." Sister Hope took a deep breath. The situation was becoming more complicated with each revelation. "Where do you live, Wren?" "In different places, but I have a special hiding place where I keep important things." "What kind of things?" Wren hesitated, clearly debating internally whether she should trust the nun further. Finally, she made a decision. "Want to see?" An hour later, Sister Hope found herself in a place she never imagined existed. Wren had led her through a series of alleys and narrow passages until they reached what appeared to be an abandoned building. But when they entered through an almost invisible opening in the side wall, the nun discovered that the inside was far from abandoned. Wren had transformed a small room in the basement into a true operations center. The walls were covered with rudimentary hand-drawn maps of the city, photos cut from old newspapers found in the trash, and dozens of drawings of people organized by categories that only she understood. "My God," whispered Sister Hope, observing the complexity of that system. "Wren, how did you manage to do all this? A little each day, and with Caramel's help." It was then that the nun noticed the stray dog, lying in the corner of the room, watching her attentively. He was clearly the guardian of that place. "Sister Hope," said Wren, her voice taking on a more serious tone, "I know things about the fireman that he doesn't know I know." "What things?" Wren went to a specific wall where she had pasted several photos cut from newspapers. They were images of Bennett at social events, store openings, reports about his company. But among these photos, there was something that made Sister Hope's heart stop. An old photo where Bennett appeared alongside other local businessmen, including the man from the alley who had terrified Wren. "They know each other," said Wren simply. "And there are more people involved." Sister Hope studied the photos with growing horror. If Wren was right, the situation was much more dangerous than anyone imagined. The girl had discovered some kind of connection between Bennett and the people who were terrorizing her. "Wren, are you sure they worked together?" "I don't know if they work together now, but they worked before." The girl pointed to a specific photo. "This photo is from 5 years ago. That's when my mom still took care of me. Did your mother know these people? Wren lowered her eyes, her voice becoming almost inaudible. My mom worked at the bad man's house. That's where bad things happened. The puzzle began to form in Sister Hope's mind. Wren was the daughter of a maid who had suffered some kind of abuse. The girl had witnessed something terrible, or represented some kind of threat to powerful people, which was why she had been abandoned. Wren, why are you showing me all this? The girl raised her eyes, and for the first time since they met, Sister Hope saw tears running down her face. Because they're going to try to get me again. And when they try, they'll hurt anyone who tries to protect me, including the fireman. At that moment, as if summoned by the conversation, the sound of footsteps echoed from outside the abandoned building. Caramel got up immediately, growling softly. Wren became tense, her eyes darting to a secret passage that Sister Hope had not noticed before. They found this hiding place, whispered Wren, already grabbing a small backpack that was always prepared. We need to get out. Now. It was then that Harvey's voice echoed from upstairs, chilling the blood of both. I know you're here, girl, and this time you won't escape. The sound of Harvey's footsteps echoing through the abandoned building made Wren enter total survival mode. In seconds, she had gathered the most important items from her hiding place, the notebook with the drawings, some crucial photos, and a small object wrapped in cloth that Sister Hope couldn't identify. This way, whispered Wren, indicating an opening in the wall that seemed impossible to see by anyone who didn't know of its existence. Caramel, come! The dog obeyed immediately, following the two through a narrow tunnel that connected the basement to an old sewer system. Sister Hope struggled to keep up with Wren, impressed with how the girl navigated that underground labyrinth with the certainty of someone who knew every inch of the course. How did you discover these tunnels? Asked the nun, panting. My mom brought me here once when I was younger. She said that if I ever needed to hide, this was the safest place. Wren's voice echoed strangely in the confined space. She knew many secrets of this city. They emerged 15 minutes later in a completely different location, the abandoned backyard of an old house on the outskirts of the city. Wren carefully checked if there was anyone nearby before leaving the tunnel, her sharpened instincts picking up any sign of danger. Sister Hope, she said, her breathing still uneven from the effort. I need to tell you everything I know. But first, we need to warn the fireman. He's in danger. How do you know? Because Harvey wasn't alone. I heard at least 2 other voices upstairs, and one of them... Wren hesitated, her face paling. One of them was from the man in the alley. Silas. Sister Hope felt the world spin around her. If Wren was right, then Bennett had innocently become involved in a much larger and more dangerous conspiracy than anyone imagined. Wren, we need to go to the police. No! The answer was immediate and categorical. Silas has friends in the police. My mom told me. That's why she could never report what he did to her. The nun took a deep breath, trying to process all the information. Then what do? We go to the fireman. But first, Wren went to a small building in the back of the abandoned backyard, another hiding place she had prepared. From there, she retrieved a small metal box. There are things here that my mum left me before she left. When Wren opened the box, Sister Hope saw documents, some old photos, and what appeared to be handwritten letters. The girl picked up a specific envelope, yellowed with time. My mom wrote this for me, in case something happened. She knew Silas would one day try to find me. With trembling hands, Wren took a letter from the careful handwriting and read aloud. My dear Wren, if you are reading this, it means I could not protect you as I promised. Silas Crane is a dangerous man who hurts women and children. He did bad things to me when I worked at his house, and when he found out I was pregnant, he threatened me so that I would never tell anyone anything. There are photos and documents in the blue box hidden behind the loose wall in the back room of the house where I worked. If you ever need to defend yourself, This evidence will help. And always remember, you are strong, intelligent, and deserve to be happy. Look for good people like Mr. Bennet. He was always kind to me when I cleaned his office. Your loving mother, Camilla. The silence that followed was heavy. Sister Hope finally understood the full complexity of the situation. Wren was not just an abandoned child, she was potentially the key to exposing serious crimes committed by powerful men in the city. "Wren," said the nun carefully, "your mother mentioned a blue box with evidence. Do you know where it is?" "I know, but it's dangerous to go there. The house now belongs to another rich man, a friend of Silas." "And could this evidence incriminate Silas?" "My mom said yes. Photos, recordings, documents. Everything hidden in the place that only she knew." At that moment, Sister Hope's cell phone rang. It was Patty from the bakery, and her voice was full of urgency. "Sister, thank God I found your number. Something terrible happened to Mr. Bennet." "What was it?" "He's been arrested. They say it's for irregularities in the company, but everyone knows he's an honest man. And the strange thing is that the one who made the accusation was his own accountant, that Harvey." Wren, who had heard the entire conversation, clenched her fists with an anger that didn't seem possible in someone so small. "They framed him, just like they framed my mom." "How so?" "Silas always does that. He uses people who work close to the victims to create lies. That's how he forced my mom to leave the city." Sister Hope understood that they were facing a pattern of behavior. Silas and his accomplices had systematically destroyed anyone who posed a threat, and now they were doing the same to Bennet. "Wren, we need to act fast. If your mother was right about this evidence—" "I already know what to do," said the girl, her voice taking on a determination that scared the nun. "But it's very dangerous. They'll be expecting me to try to recover the evidence." "Then we won't try." "No, sister. You don't understand." Wren picked up the notebook and showed one of the last drawings, a detailed map of a large house. "I already recovered the evidence." The revelation left Sister Hope speechless. "How?" "2 weeks ago, when I found out where my mom had hidden the box. I entered the house during the early hours of the morning, took everything, and left a fake copy in its place. They still don't know that the real evidence is with me." "Wren, you're 4 years old. How did you manage to do this alone?" "Caramel helped me, and I know how to get into houses without making noise. My mum taught me, in case we needed to run away from somewhere quickly." Sister Hope felt a mixture of admiration and horror for the extraordinary child in front of her. Wren had spent months planning and executing an operation that rivaled any professional police investigation. "Where's the evidence now?" Wren pointed to the metal box she had removed from the hiding place. "Everything is here. Photos of Silas hurting my mom, recordings of him talking about bribing cops, falsified documents. And there's more." "More what?" "There's evidence that he and Harvey have been working together for years. Documents from Mr. Bennet's company that were tampered with, fake contracts, a lot of things that my mum photographed when she cleaned the offices." The magnitude of the conspiracy began to form in Sister Hope's mind. Harvey had spent years planting false evidence in Bennet's company, preparing the ground to destroy him when it was convenient. And Silas had used his influence to protect the scheme. "Wren, if you have all this evidence, why haven't you used it before?" "Because I was waiting for the right moment, and because I needed an adult person I could trust to help me." The girl looked directly at the nun. "You are that person. But we still have the problem of the corrupt police. That's why we'll need help from someone outside the city, someone that Silas can't buy or threaten." It was then that Wren revealed the last element of her extraordinary plan. "Sister Hope, you said that before you were a nun, you were a lawyer, right?" "Yes, but—" "And you still have contacts from when you worked in Phoenix? People who could help report these crimes?" The nun nodded slowly, beginning to understand where Wren was taking the plan. "I have some contacts in the state attorney's office." "Then that's what we're going to do. We're going to take the evidence to Phoenix, hand it over to people Silas can't control, and save Mr. Bennett before it's too late. And how do we get to Phoenix without being discovered? Wren smiled for the first time in days, a smile that mixed childlike innocence with impressive strategic intelligence. I've already thought about that too, but first we need to rescue Mr. Bennett from jail. And for that, we'll need to create a very big distraction. At that moment, watching that 4-year-old child finalize a plan that could save an innocent man and expose a network of corruption, Sister Hope understood that she was facing something extraordinary. Wren was not just a survivor. She was a born strategist who had transformed months of suffering into a powerful weapon against her oppressors. But she also realized that the next few days would be the most dangerous of their lives, as men like Silas and Harvey would not hesitate to do anything to protect their secrets. The final battle was about to begin. While Wren and Sister Hope planned their risky rescue operation, Bennett found himself in a cold and damp cell in the local police station, trying to understand how his life had crumbled so quickly. The charges against him were serious: tax evasion, money laundering, and misuse of company resources. Each document presented by Harvey seemed meticulously forged to incriminate him. Chief Palmer, a burly 50-year-old man who had always treated Bennett with respect due to his position in the community, now watched him with a mixture of disappointment and suspicion. "Bennett, I've known you for 15 years, said Palmer during the interrogation. "I never thought the day would come when you'd be sitting on the other side of this table. Because I didn't do any of this, Chief. Someone is framing me. The evidence is very convincing. Your own accountant brought documents that show suspicious transfers, doctored contracts, financial transactions that don't match the company's declared revenue." Bennett knew he was caught in a carefully woven web. Each document that Harvey had presented contained real elements, mixed with forgeries so well done that it would be almost impossible to prove his innocence without a thorough investigation. "Chief, I need you to investigate Harvey Davies. He's been blackmailing me for months." "Blackmailing? How?" Bennett hesitated. How to explain that he was being blackmailed because of his concern for a street child without sounding like a man with dubious intentions? He discovered some personal activities of mine that could be misinterpreted. Palmer's gaze hardened. "What kind of personal activities?" "I've been helping an abandoned child, informally. Harvey used that to blackmail me, saying he would make it look inappropriate if I didn't pay him a monthly amount." "What child?" "A 4-year-old girl who lives on the streets. She saved my life a few months ago." Palmer took notes, but his expression remained skeptical. "Bennett, do you understand how strange this sounds? A wealthy businessman developing an obsession with a street child." "It's not obsession, it's human responsibility." At that moment, the door to the interrogation room opened and Silas Crane entered, wearing an expensive suit and carrying a leather briefcase. Bennett felt the blood run cold. Silas was known in town as an influential businessman, but there was something sinister about his presence there. "Chief Palmer, I brought some additional documents that may better clarify this case," said Silas with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Crane, what documents are these?" "Contracts that my company had with Sterling supermarkets over the past 2 years. Unfortunately, I discovered several irregularities that I never reported out of personal consideration for Bennett." Silas spread papers on the table, each one seeming more incriminating than the last. Bennett recognized some of the genuine contracts, but others were completely foreign to him. "Are these signatures yours?" asked Palmer, pointing to documents that Bennett had never seen. "Some are, others aren't. I've never seen these contracts in my life." "The signatures appear authentic," observed Silas with false concern. "Maybe you've forgotten. After all, a businessman signs so many documents." It was at this moment that Bennett understood the true extent of the conspiracy. Silas and Harvey had not only forged documents, They had spent years creating a false paper trail that would make it impossible to prove his innocence. Each legitimate contract he had signed had been used as a basis for creating more incriminating falsified versions. "Chief," said Silas, adjusting his tie, "there's something else you need to know about Mr. Sterling. We have received worrying information about his behavior towards a street child." Bennett's heart raced. "What information?" "Several people have reported that you've been stalking a little girl around town, offering her money, trying to take her to isolated places. Behavior that, considering your current situation, raises very serious questions." "That's a lie. I was trying to help her." "That's what they all say," replied Silas with a cold smile. "But we have witnesses, photographs, evidence of a disturbing pattern of behavior." Palmer looked at Bennett with growing suspicion. "What photographs?" Silas took an envelope from the folder and spread several photos on the table. They were images of Bennett watching Wren from afar, approaching her in alleys, talking to her in isolated locations. All the photos were real, but out of context, they seemed extremely compromising. "How did you get these photos?" asked Bennett, horrified. "Concerned citizens contacted us when they noticed your suspicious behavior," replied Silas. "Fortunately, the child always managed to escape before anything worse happened." Bennett realized that he had been watched and photographed during all these months. Every genuine attempt to help Wren had been documented and distorted to create a sinister narrative about his intentions. "Where is the girl now?" asked Palmer. "Missing," replied Silas with false concern. "We fear that Mr. Sterling may have finally managed to take her somewhere. Hence the urgency in arresting him." The trap was complete. Bennett was not only being incriminated for financial crimes, but also being painted as a predator who had kidnapped a helpless child. It was an accusation that would destroy his reputation forever, even if it was later proven false. "Chief, I need a lawyer," said Bennett, his voice trembling with anger and despair. "Of course. But considering the severity of the charges, including now a possible kidnapping issue, there will be no possibility of bail." Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Wren and Sister Hope watched the police station from afar, hidden behind the abandoned church that was on the next block. Wren had insisted that they needed to check the situation before leaving for Phoenix. "They put extra guards at the entrance," observed Wren, her trained eyes picking up details that the nun hadn't noticed. "And there's a strange car parked across the street. Silas is in there." "How do you know?" "Because it's his car. License plate ZXC 7890, always parked in the same place when he goes to the police station to take care of his business." Sister Hope was impressed once again with Wren's ability to observe. "If Silas is there, It means he's personally supervising to make sure Mr. Bennett isn't released." Wren clenched her fists. "They're not just thieves. They're people who destroy other people for pleasure. Wren, we need to leave. If they find us here, we're not leaving yet. There's one thing I need to do first." Before Sister Hope could protest, Wren had disappeared into the shadows, moving with the agility of a cat. The nun lost sight of her for several agonizing minutes until she saw her emerge from a side alley, carrying something in her hands. "What did you get?" asked the nun when Wren returned. "Proof that Mr. Bennett is being framed." Wren showed a small digital recorder that seemed to be working. "I managed to get close to the window of the room where they're interrogating him. I recorded everything." "Wren, that was extremely dangerous. But it was necessary. Now we have Silas's voice, lying about Mr. Bennett, inventing false stories. That, along with the other evidence, will be enough to clear him." Sister Hope looked at that extraordinary child who had just risked her own life to obtain evidence that could save an innocent man. "You planned this from the beginning, didn't you?" "Not everything. But when I saw that they were framing him in the same way they framed my mum, I knew I needed to act." Wren carefully put the recorder in her backpack. "Now we can go to Phoenix. How are we going to get there without money for a ticket?" Wren smiled. That smile that mixed innocence and strategic intelligence. I've already thought about that too. There's a truck driver who always stops at Patty's Diner on Thursdays. He goes to Phoenix every week, and Patty always says he's a good man who helps those in need. What if he doesn't want to take us? He will, because I'll tell him we're running away from bad people who want to hurt us. And I'll show him one of the photos I have of Silas. I'm sure he'll recognize him. How can you be so sure? Because the truck driver's name is Clint. And 3 years ago he filed a complaint against Silas for not paying for a freight load. The complaint was mysteriously archived, but I found a copy of it in the trash at the police station. Sister Hope shook her head, impressed once again with the depth of knowledge that Wren had accumulated about the people and secrets of the city. You really thought of everything. I had to think, because if I didn't think, good people like Mr. Bennett and you could get hurt because of me. That night, as they headed towards Patty's Diner, Wren carrying her backpack with the evidence that could change everything, the girl made a confession that deeply touched Sister Hope's heart. Sister, when all this is over and Mr. Bennett is free, do you think he'll still want to help me, even after all the trouble I caused him? Wren, you didn't cause any trouble. You were a victim of bad people. But if I hadn't existed, my mom wouldn't have suffered. If I hadn't saved him from the fire, Harvey wouldn't have used that to blackmail him. It seems like I bring trouble to all the good people I meet. Sister Hope stopped walking and knelt in front of Wren, gently holding her shoulders. Wren, listen carefully to what I'm going to say. You don't bring trouble. You bring light to dark places. Mr. Bennett isn't in jail because of you. He's in jail because there are bad men in this world who can't stand to see good people doing the right things. Then why does it hurt so much in my chest? Because you have a big and good heart. And hearts like that always hurt when they see injustice. Wren nodded, but her eyes still reflected the pain of carrying a weight that no child should carry. As they continued towards the meeting with Clint, both knew that they were about to embark on a journey that would determine not only the fate of Bennett, but also the future of an extraordinary girl who had learned to fight against the darkness using only her intelligence, courage, and an unwavering kindness. Patty's Diner operated 24 hours a day, serving mainly truck drivers who traveled the route between the interior of Arizona and the capital. The simple establishment, with its formica tables and the constant smell of frying oil, had become an informal meeting point for those who needed information about transport or simply a safe place to spend the night. When Wren and Sister Hope arrived, it was past 10 at night. Clint was sitting at a table in the back, a large man of 45, with a grizzled beard and hands calloused from hard work. His tired expression lit up slightly when he saw the nun approaching. "Sister Hope, what a surprise to see you here so late," he said, standing up respectfully. "Is everything okay?" "Good evening, Clint. Actually, I really need your help. This is Wren," said the nun, placing her hand protectively on the girl's shoulder. "We're in a very delicate situation." Clint looked at Wren with curiosity. Even in the dim light of the diner, he could see that the child possessed an intensity in her gaze that was not common in someone so young. There was something about her that reminded him of his own daughter, who lived with his ex-wife in Phoenix. "What kind of situation?" he asked, gesturing for them to sit down. Sister Hope took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "Wren is being persecuted by dangerous men who want to hurt her, and an innocent man has been unjustly arrested for trying to protect her. We need to get to Phoenix urgently to deliver evidence that can prove his innocence." Clint frowned. "What dangerous men?" It was then that Wren decided to speak. She took one of the photos she had collected from her backpack and showed it to the truck driver. "Do you know this man?" Clint took the photo and his expression changed immediately. It was an image of Silas Crane at a social event, smiling at the camera with an air of superiority that Clint recognized instantly. "Silas Crane," he murmured, his voice loaded with contained anger. That bastard owes me $3,000 from a freight I did 3 years ago. When I tried to collect, he used political influence to threaten me. He does that to a lot of people, said Wren simply. That's why I need to stop him. Clint looked at that small child who was talking about stopping a powerful man as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Girl, you don't understand the type of person Silas Crane is. He has connections throughout the state. Politicians, judges, cops. I do understand more than you imagine. Wren opened the notebook and showed some pages. I have maps of all his businesses, photos of the crimes he committed, recordings of compromising conversations, and I know exactly who in Phoenix can help arrest him. Clint examined the drawings and notes in the notebook, becoming increasingly impressed. How did a 4-year-old get all this? Because my mom worked for him and taught me to always pay attention to the details, and because I spent months planning how to avenge what he did to her. The word avenge, spoken by such a small voice, had a profound impact on Clint. He saw in Wren something he recognized, the iron determination of someone who had suffered injustices and decided to fight against them. Sister Hope, he said finally, are you sure you can protect this girl in Phoenix if Silas finds out where you are? I have contacts in the state attorney's office, people who cannot be bought or intimidated by him, replied the nun. But we need to get there before he finds out we fled the city. Clint looked again at the photo of Silas, remembering the humiliation he had suffered when he tried to collect his money. The man had not only refused to pay, but had also made veiled threats against his family. All right, he said, putting the photo in his pocket. I'm leaving here in an hour for Phoenix. You can come with me, but there are conditions. What are they? Asked Sister Hope. During the trip, the girl stays always next to you. Any stop we make, she doesn't leave the truck. And when we arrive in Phoenix, you go straight to where you need to go, without involving me any further in the story. I accept the conditions, said Wren before the nun could respond, but you need to know that if you help us, Silas may try to get revenge later. Girl, he already owes me money and has already threatened me. I have nothing more to lose with this man. An hour later, Clint's truck left the small town of Havenwood, carrying in its cabin 2 unlikely passengers, a nun who had abandoned a prosperous legal career to care for abandoned children, and a 4-year-old girl who carried evidence capable of bringing down a network of corruption. During the first hours of the trip, Wren remained awake, watching the dark landscape through the window. Sister Hope noticed that the girl was more tense than usual, her muscles rigid as if she were preparing for a battle. Wren, are you afraid? Asked the nun softly. Not exactly afraid, replied the girl after a pause. But I know that from now on, everything will change. If we manage to deliver the evidence, Silas and Harvey will be arrested. But if we don't think like that. We will manage. And after? When it's all over, what will happen to me? It was a question that Sister Hope had been avoiding thinking about. Wren was officially an abandoned child, with no known family. Even if they managed to clear Bennett's name and arrest the real culprits, there would still remain the question of the girl's future. Let's solve one thing at a time, said the nun. First, we save Mr. Bennett. Then we think about your future. I've already thought about it, said Wren, her voice taking on that disturbing maturity. If my mum is alive somewhere, I want to find her. If she's not, well, I've learned to take care of myself. Wren, you're 4 years old. You can't live alone forever. Yes, I can. I've been living for months. The conversation was interrupted by Clint, who signaled towards the front of the road. There's a police checkpoint up ahead. It's not normal to have a roadblock on this highway at this hour. Sister Hope felt her heart race. What do we do? Stay calm. It might be routine, said Clint, but his voice betrayed concern. Wren, lie down here on the seat and pretend you're sleeping. Sister, take off your veil and mess up your hair a bit. If they ask, you're my cousin who's going to Phoenix to solve family problems. As they approached the barrier, 2 police officers stopped them. One of them was young and seemed to be following routine procedure, but the other was older and observed the inside of the cab with excessive interest. "Good evening. Vehicle documents and identification," said the younger officer. Clint handed over the papers calmly. "Any problems on the road?" "We're looking for a missing child. A 4-year-old girl, brown hair, may be accompanied by an adult woman," replied the older officer, his flashlight illuminating the interior of the cab. Sister Hope felt the blood run cold. Silas had discovered that they had fled and mobilized the police to find them. Wren remained motionless, pretending to sleep, but the nun could feel the tension in her small body. "We haven't seen any children," said Clint naturally. "This is my cousin. She's going to Phoenix to resolve some family inheritance issues." The older officer pointed the flashlight directly at Wren. "Can I see the child's face?" "She's not a child. She's a young woman for her age. Growth problems," lied Clint without hesitation, "and she's sleeping because she took medicine for motion sickness." For a few tense seconds, the officer watched Wren, who kept her eyes closed and her breathing regular. Finally, he lowered the flashlight and returned the documents. "You can proceed. But if you see anything suspicious on the road, report it immediately." As the truck moved away from the barrier, Wren sat up slowly, her eyes shining in the darkness. "They're looking for me. Silas must have realized that I took the real evidence." "How could he have found out?" asked Sister Hope. "He probably went to check if the box was still in the hiding place and discovered that it had been replaced with a fake one." Clint looked in the rearview mirror, checking if they were being followed. "Girls, the situation has become more dangerous. If they've set up roadblocks on the main road, they may have set them up on others too." "Do you know any alternative routes?" asked the nun. "I do, but it'll increase the travel time by at least 3 hours. And they're bad roads with no police station, no help if something goes wrong." "It's better than being arrested by Silas," said Wren with determination. "He would never let me get to Phoenix alive." The seriousness with which the girl spoke made Clint understand that they were dealing with something much more dangerous than he had imagined. "All right, we're going by the alternative route. But hold on tight, because it's going to be a difficult trip." As the truck diverted onto a bumpy secondary road, Wren took the recorder out of her backpack and checked if it was still working. The recordings she had made at the police station were crucial to proving Bennett's innocence, but they also represented a life sentence for them if they fell into the wrong hands. "Sister Hope," she said, handing the recorder to the nun, "if something happens to me during the trip, promise you'll deliver this to the right people in Phoenix?" "Nothing's going to happen to you. Promise?" Sister Hope took the small device, feeling the weight of the responsibility it represented. "I promise." In that dark dawn, as the truck swayed on the bad roads of the Arizona interior, 3 unlikely people formed an alliance against injustice. A truck driver seeking revenge for an unpaid debt, a former lawyer who had found her true vocation, and a 4-year-old girl who carried in her backpack the power to change the destiny of everyone involved. But as they approached Phoenix, everyone knew that the most dangerous part of the journey was still to come. Dawn arrived when Clint's truck finally sighted the first buildings of Phoenix on the horizon. The trip on the secondary roads had been grueling, 8 hours of bumps, dust, and constant tension. Wren had managed to sleep only a few hours, always waking up startled at the slightest different noise. "We're here," announced Clint, his voice hoarse from fatigue. "Where do you want me to drop you off?" Sister Hope consulted a crumpled paper she had taken from her bag. "At the state attorney's office building, in the downtown area. Do you know it?" "I do, but are you sure you'll be able to talk to someone important this early in the morning?" "I'm going to call Attorney Patricia Holloway. We worked together a few years ago, before I became a nun. If anyone can help us, it's her." Wren watched the big city through the window, her eyes registering every detail of the busy avenues, the tall buildings, the heavy traffic. It was a world completely different from her small town, but she showed no intimidation, only total concentration. "Sister," she said suddenly, "there's something I need to tell you before we meet your friend." "What is it?" Wren hesitated, as if she were struggling with some difficult internal decision. "When my mom left, she didn't abandon me like I always said." Sister Hope turned completely to the girl. "What do you mean?" "She was forced to leave, and I know where she is." The silence that followed was filled with emotion. Clint slowed down, realizing that he was witnessing an important revelation. "Wren, why haven't you ever told me this before?" "Because I was afraid they would take me off the streets before I could gather all the evidence against Silas." The girl's voice trembled slightly. "And because I was afraid my mom wouldn't want to see me." "Where is she?" Wren took a carefully folded paper from her backpack. It was an address written in childish but legible handwriting, at a rehab clinic here in Phoenix, Haven of Hope Clinic on Elm Street. Sister Hope read the address and felt her heart ache. It was a clinic specializing in the treatment of chemical dependency, known for serving low-income people. "How did you find out where she was?" "My mom left clues for me before she left. She knew that one day I would grow up enough to understand and go look for her." Wren showed a small chain with a pendant. "She left this hidden with the other things. Inside the pendant there's a tiny paper with the address." Clint stopped the truck on the shoulder of the avenue. "Girl, do you want to go see your mom first, or deliver the evidence to the state attorney's office?" It was a question loaded with implications. If they went to the clinic first, they would run the risk of Silas discovering where they were before they could deliver the evidence. But if they went to the state attorney's office first, Wren might lose the opportunity to see her mother before the whole situation exploded publicly. "The evidence first," said Wren, with a maturity that broke everyone's heart. "If my mom waited so long, she can wait a few more hours. But Mr. Bennett is in jail and needs to be released today." 20 minutes later, they were standing in front of the imposing building of the State Attorney's Office of Arizona. Sister Hope got out of the truck, carrying the backpack with the evidence, while Wren followed her closely, her eyes constantly checking the surroundings for any sign of danger. "Clint, thank you so much for everything," said the nun. "You saved our lives." "I just hope you get what you came for," he replied. "And girl," he addressed Wren, "if you need help getting back home later, look for me at the truck stop on the highway. I'm always around there." The lobby of the state attorney's office was beginning to receive the first employees of the day. Sister Hope went to the reception desk, where a middle-aged woman attended her with professional courtesy. "Good morning. I urgently need to speak with Attorney Patricia Holloway. It's an emergency related to corruption and wrongful imprisonment. The attorney hasn't arrived yet, but I can try to contact her. What's your name?" "Marcia Santos. Tell her it's Marcia, who worked with her at the Holloway and Associates law firm." While the receptionist made the call, Wren observed everything around with her characteristic attention. There were security guards, cameras, multiple exits. She was mentally mapping the entire environment, as she always did in new places. "Attorney Holloway said she's on her way," informed the receptionist. "You can wait there in the waiting room." 15 minutes later, an elegant 40-year-old woman entered the lobby. Patricia Holloway had been a prosecutor for over a decade, known for her unwavering integrity and for only accepting cases that really mattered to justice. "Marcia!" she exclaimed, hugging Sister Hope. "What a surprise! When I received the call, I almost didn't believe it." "And who is this little one?" "Patricia, this is Wren, and she's at the center of the most important case you'll ever see." In the next 45 minutes, in Attorney Holloway's private room, Wren and Sister Hope methodically presented all the evidence they had collected. The prosecutor examined each document, listened to each recording, studied each photo with growing amazement. "This is extraordinary," said Patricia finally. "We have here evidence of corruption, blackmail, document forgery, sexual abuse, and conspiracy to frame an innocent person. How many people know about this evidence?" "Only the three of us and Clint, the truck driver who brought us," replied Sister Hope. "And these men, Silas and Harvey, don't know you're here." "They don't know, but they must be looking," said Wren. "They set up roadblocks on the roads last night." Patricia got up and walked to the window, observing the city below. "Wren, I need to ask you some difficult questions. Do you remember witnessing any of the crimes that your mother suffered?" "I remember some things. Voices shouting, my mom crying, men talking about money and silence." "Would you have the courage to repeat this in front of a judge?" Wren nodded without hesitation. "Yes, if it helps arrest them and release Mr. Bennett." "Very well. I'm going to start the procedures immediately. But before, there's something you need to know." Patricia returned to the table and picked up a file she had consulted during the presentation of the evidence. "Last night, I received a call from a colleague from the interior. A businessman named Bennett Sterling was arrested for financial crimes, and this morning new charges were added: kidnapping of a minor." "He didn't kidnap anyone," protested Wren. "I know, honey, but his situation has become very complicated. The lawyers who tried to represent him were threatened and dropped the case. He's completely isolated and defenseless." Sister Hope felt despair growing. "How much time do we have before it's too late?" "If your evidence is validated today, I can get a release warrant still this afternoon, but there's something else." "What?" Patricia looked directly at Wren. "Honey, during our preliminary investigation into Silas Crane, we discovered that he has even more extensive connections than we imagined, including some employees here at the state attorney's office itself." "Does that mean we can't trust anyone?" asked Sister Hope. "It means we're going to need to act very carefully. I've already identified 3 prosecutors that I know are absolutely trustworthy. We'll work only with them, in total secrecy." Wren shifted in her chair, clearly worried. "Attorney Holloway, if Silas finds out we're here—" "He won't find out. This floor is safe, and only authorized people have access." It was at that moment that Patricia's secretary knocked on the door urgently. "Attorney, sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation downstairs." "What situation?" "Police officers from the interior are here with a search and seizure warrant. They say they're looking for a kidnapped child and a woman suspected of complicity." Everyone's blood froze. Silas had discovered where they were. "How much time do we have?" asked Patricia quickly. "They're coming up now. Maybe 5 minutes." Patricia turned to Wren and Sister Hope. "There's an emergency exit that connects directly to the underground parking lot. You need to leave now, but before—" She quickly grabbed all the evidence and divided it into 2 parts. "Wren, take half with me. Marcia, take the other half. If we get separated, at least one of you can get the evidence to people who can help." "Where are we going?" asked Sister Hope, already grabbing her share of the documents. "To the Haven of Hope Clinic," said Wren with determination. "It's the last place Silas would think to look. And maybe it's time for me to find my mom." As they ran down the emergency stairs, following Patricia's directions, Wren carried more than evidence in her backpack. She carried the hope of reuniting with the most important person in her life, but also the fear of discovering that some damage caused by Silas could be irreversible. The race against time had begun, and now it wasn't just about saving Bennett or arresting the culprits. It was about a 4-year-old girl finally discovering if she still had a family to call her own. The Haven of Hope Clinic was located in a neighborhood farther from downtown Phoenix, surrounded by old trees that provided an atmosphere of peace and recovery. The 2-story building, painted in soft shades of blue and white, stood in stark contrast to the urgency and danger that Wren and Sister Hope had faced in recent hours. As the cab they'd hailed from the prosecutor's office underground parking lot dropped them off at the clinic's entrance, Wren remained still for a few moments, observing the place where her mother had spent the last few months. Her small hands gripped the backpack strap, and for the first time since Sister Hope had met her, she saw genuine vulnerability in the girl's eyes. "Are you sure you want to do this now?" Sister Hope asked gently. "We can wait until this whole situation with Silas is resolved." "No," Wren replied, her voice firm despite the almost imperceptible tremor. "If anything happens to me today, I want my mother to know I did it, that I gathered the evidence, that I tried to get justice for what he did to her." The clinic's receptionist, a kind, grey-haired woman named Mrs. Finley, greeted them with cautious curiosity. It was unusual to receive visitors so early, especially a nun, accompanied by such a young child. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "We're here to visit Carmela Ferreira," Sister Hope said. "This is Wren, her daughter." Mrs. Finley's face lit up with surprise and emotion. "Wren, little Wren, your mother talks about you every day. She'll be so happy." "How is she?" Wren asked, interrupting politely. "Much better, dear. Carmela has been with us for 8 months and has made extraordinary progress. She's been completely clean for 3 months, working as a kitchen assistant and helping other patients in recovery." Mrs. Finley led them through hallways illuminated by large windows where other patients walked or chatted in small groups. Wren observed everything carefully, her survival instincts making her mentally map every exit, every possible hiding place. "Does she know I might be alive?" Wren asked suddenly. "Yes, she does. In fact, it was one of the main motivations for her recovery. She always said she needed to get strong and healthy so she could look for you someday." They stopped in front of a door with a small sign, "Kitchen authorized personnel only." Through the glass in the door, they could see several people working on preparing lunch. "There she is, Mrs." Finley said, pointing to a slender woman with brown hair pulled back in a ponytail who was arranging plates on a tray. Wren froze. The woman she saw through the glass was different from the mother she remembered, thinner, with worry lines around her eyes. But there was something in her movements, a familiar delicacy in handling the objects, that awakened deep memories in the girl. "She looks sad," Wren observed. "Carrying the guilt of leaving you is very heavy for her," Mrs. Finley explained. "Even knowing she had no choice, that she was threatened, she never forgave herself." Sister Hope knelt beside Wren. "Do you want to go in now, or would you prefer to wait a little?" "I want to go in, but—" Wren hesitated, revealing her true age for the first time. "What if she doesn't recognize me? What if she thinks I've changed too much? What if she doesn't want to be my mother anymore?" "Wren, a mother always recognizes her child, and a mother's love never changes, no matter how much time passes." Mrs. Finley gently knocked on the kitchen door and entered. "Carmela, you have a very special visitor. Can you come out here for a minute?" Carmela looked up from her work, wiping her hands on her apron. "A visitor? But I'm not expecting—" That's when she saw Wren standing in the doorway, holding Sister Hope's hand. Time seemed to stop completely. The tray Carmela was holding slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor, but she didn't seem to notice the noise. "Wren," she whispered, as if she were seeing a miracle. "My little Wren." The girl took a hesitant step toward her mother. "Hi, Mom." That was all Carmela needed to hear. She ran through the kitchen and knelt in front of her daughter, hugging her with an intensity that was both desperate and infinitely gentle. "My daughter, my precious girl," Carmela sobbed, kissing the top of Wren's head. "I looked for you. I looked so hard. They told me you had disappeared, that maybe something terrible had happened." "Nothing terrible happened, Mom. I learned to take care of myself, like you taught me." Carmela pulled back slightly to look at her daughter's face, her hands trembling as she touched the girl's cheeks as if to make sure she was real. "You've grown so much. And you're so thin. And these clothes—" Carmela noticed Wren's overall condition, clearly indicating months of living on the streets. "Oh my God, what have I done? What have I done to you? You saved my life, Mom. If I had stayed, Silas would have hurt both of us." The mention of Silas made Carmela stiffen, her eyes filling with fear. "Wren, How did you— He didn't find you, did he? He tried to. But I was smarter than him. It was then that Wren did something that surprised everyone present. She pulled one of the photos she had collected as evidence, an image of Silas at a social event, from her backpack, and showed it to her mother. I gathered evidence against him, Mom. Photos, documents, recordings. Everything he did to you, to other people. I'm going to give it to the police, and he's going to be arrested. Carmela took the photo with trembling hands. Wren, you don't understand. This man is very powerful. He has friends everywhere. If you try to fight him— I've been fighting him for months, and I'm not alone. Wren turned to Sister Hope, who had watched the reunion with tears in her eyes. This is Sister Hope. She helped me, she protected me, and she has a friend at the prosecutor's office who will use the evidence to arrest Silas. Carmela looked at the nun with deep gratitude. Thank you. Thank you for taking care of my daughter when I couldn't. She took care of herself most of the time, Sister Hope replied. Wren is the bravest and most intelligent child I've ever met. Mom, Wren said, her voice taking on that mature seriousness, I need to tell you everything that happened, but I also need to know, are you really better? Are you strong enough to help me finish this? Carmela took a deep breath, wiping away her tears. I am, my daughter. I've spent 8 months preparing for this moment, for the day when I could truly protect you. For the next hour, sitting in a private room at the clinic, Wren told her mother her whole story. Life on the streets, meeting Bennett, discovering the evidence, the conspiracy between Silas and Harvey. Carmela listened in silence, alternating between pride in her daughter's intelligence and horror at what she had gone through alone. And now? Carmela asked when Wren finished. If Silas found out where you are, that's why we came here, Sister Hope explained. Wren thought this would be the last place he'd think to look. She was right, Carmela said. Silas doesn't know I'm here. When I was forced to leave town, I told everyone I was going to D.C. At that moment, Mrs. Finley knocked on the door urgently. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there are men outside asking questions about a nun and a child. They say they're police, but something doesn't feel right. Wren stood up immediately, her survival instincts kicking in. They found us. We need to get out of here now. Where to? Carmela asked, also standing up. I don't know yet, but they can't catch us with the evidence. It was then that Carmela made a decision that would change everything. Wren, give me half of the evidence. If we get separated, one of us might be able to reach people who can help. Mom, it's too dangerous. If Silas finds out you have the evidence— Honey, I spent 2 years of my life being afraid of that man. I'm not going to spend another day. It's time he paid for what he did. Wren quickly divided the evidence into 2 parts, handing one to her mother. If anything happens to me, take everything to Attorney Patricia Holloway at the prosecutor's office. She'll know what to do. Carmela hugged her daughter again, this time with the strength of someone who was preparing for a battle. Nothing's going to happen to you. I won't let it. Mrs. Finley guided them through a back exit of the clinic, which led to a small garden surrounded by a low wall. You can climb over the wall and go out onto the street in the back. My car is parked there. Take the keys and use it. As they prepared to leave, Wren looked one last time at the clinic where her mother had rebuilt herself. Mum, when this is all over, we're going to start a new life. Together, like it always should have been. But as they climbed over the back wall, hearing voices approaching the main entrance of the clinic, they all knew that before they could dream of a new life, they would have to survive the next few hours, which promised to be the most dangerous that any of them had ever faced. The chase had resumed, but this time, Wren was no longer alone. She had by her side not only an ally, but the most important person in her life, a mother who was ready to fight for her daughter with the same ferocity that Wren had shown for months in fighting for justice. The car, borrowed from Mrs. Finley, sped through the streets of Phoenix at a speed that would have attracted attention if it weren't for Carmela's skill behind the wheel. During her months at the clinic, she had occasionally worked as a volunteer driver, relearning not only how to drive, but also how to navigate the big city that had changed so much since she left. "Where are we going?" Sister Hope asked from the back seat, protectively hugging Wren, who was watching from the rear window to see if they were being followed. "To a place I learned about during treatment," Carmela replied, constantly checking the mirrors. "A church on the outskirts where Father Callahan helps people in desperate situations. He doesn't ask questions, and he doesn't turn anyone over to the authorities." Wren shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable. "Mum, I need to tell you something important before we get there." "What is it, honey?" "The evidence we divided, some of it shows bad things that happened to you. Photos, recordings. If you don't want other people to see—" Carmela took a deep breath, her hands tightening on the steering wheel. "Wren, it's been almost a year since I left. I've spent all that time thinking about how to get revenge for what Silas did to me, what he did to our family. If that evidence can put him in jail, then let everyone see it." "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. I'm tired of being ashamed of being a victim." 20 minutes later, they arrived at a small church in a simple neighborhood. Father Callahan, a black man in his 60s with graying hair and a warm smile, greeted them without asking questions, exactly as Carmela had promised. "Carmela, what a joy to see you," he said, hugging her affectionately. "And this must be the Wren you talked so much about. Father, we're in a very complicated situation. Dangerous people are chasing us, and we need a safe place to make some important calls. Come in, use my office. There's a phone, a computer if you need it, and no one will bother you here." In Father Callahan's small office, Sister Hope immediately called Attorney Patricia at the prosecutor's office. The call was answered on the first ring. "Patricia, thank God. Where are you?" "In a safe place for now. Were you able to do anything with the evidence?" "I was able to do more than I imagined. The material you brought is explosive. I've already obtained arrest warrants for Silas and Harvey and an immediate release order for Bennett." Wren approached the phone. "Attorney Holloway, has Mr. Sterling been released yet?" "Not yet, dear, but the papers are being processed now. He should be out of jail in the next 2 hours. And Silas, does he know you have the evidence?" "Not yet. We're working in absolute secrecy." "But Wren, I need to warn you about something important." "What?" "During our deeper investigation of the evidence, we discovered that Silas isn't just a local criminal. He has connections to a corruption network that extends across several states. His arrest will trigger a very large federal investigation." Carmela approached the phone. "Attorney Holloway, this is Carmela, Wren's mother. Does this mean he's going to try to flee the country?" "It's possible. That's why we need to act quickly. Do you still have some of the original evidence?" "Yes, it's here with us." "Great. I need you to come to the prosecutor's office now. We're going to do a coordinated operation. While Silas is arrested, you'll be safe here with us." Wren frowned. "Attorney Holloway, how do you know it's safe? Yesterday morning they found out where we were very quickly." There was a pause on the line. "Wren, that worried me too. That's why, in the last few hours, I conducted a discreet internal investigation. I found out who was leaking information to Silas." "Who?" "Attorney Colton Reed, a prosecutor who has worked here for 15 years. We found evidence that he received monthly payments from Silas in exchange for information about investigations." Sister Hope felt a chill down her spine. "Does he know about our meeting yesterday?" "He did. But he doesn't know anything anymore because he was removed this morning under the pretense of forced vacation. Now we're only working with people I know are absolutely trustworthy." Carmela took the phone. "Doctor, with all due respect, how can we be sure there aren't any more spies in there?" "Because the 3 people who are working with me on this case are prosecutors I personally chose. One is my husband, another is my brother, and the third is my best friend from college. If I can't trust them, I can't trust anyone. Wren reflected for a moment. All right, but we're going to do it differently. How so? I'm going to the prosecutor's office alone to deliver the evidence. My mother and Sister Hope stay here in a safe place until Silas is arrested. Wren, no, Carmela protested immediately. I'm not going to let you risk yourself alone. Mom, it makes sense. If something goes wrong and they catch me, you still have half of the evidence to continue the fight. But if we all go together and they catch us, it's all over. It was impeccable logic, but Carmela couldn't accept the idea of separating from her daughter again. Wren, I just found you. I'm not going to lose you again. You're not going to lose me. I'll be back. I promise. Father Callahan, who had overheard the entire conversation, spoke up. What if I went with the girl? Silas wouldn't dare do anything against a child in the presence of a priest, especially at the prosecutor's office. Attorney Holloway, still on the line, agreed. That's a good idea. Father Callahan, can you bring Wren here? I have a police escort waiting in the parking lot to guarantee total security. It was then that Wren asked a question that changed everything. Attorney Holloway, where exactly is Silas now? According to our information, he's at his house, seemingly unaware that we're closing in. Are you sure? Why? Wren looked at her mother and Sister Hope. Because I think he does know, and I think he's setting a trap. How can you know that? Because I know how he works. Silas never acts without having 3 different plans. If he's at his house, seemingly calm, it's because he wants you to think he suspects nothing. Carmela remembered important details. Wren is right, Doctor. Silas has always been like that. He likes to let his enemies think they're winning, and then turn the tables all at once. So what do you suggest? Wren thought quickly. I need to see the documents you have there. Because I suspect Silas is going to try something that no one is expecting. What kind of thing? He's going to try to frame other people for his crimes. Innocent people who can serve as scapegoats. Attorney Holloway was silent for a few seconds. Wren, are you suggesting that he might be preparing false evidence against other people? Not just suggesting. I'm almost certain. It's exactly what he did to Mr. Sterling. And it's what he's done to other people before. What other people? Wren turned to her mother. Mom, do you remember that man who worked at City Hall? The one who was fired for theft right after you started working at Silas's house? Carmela paled. Arthur Finch, but he was honest. He would never steal anything. Exactly. Silas framed him because Arthur was suspicious of the contracts the city was making with Silas's companies. Attorney Holloway was following the reasoning. You're saying that Silas has a pattern of framing innocent people when he feels threatened. Not just a pattern, he must have a ready-made list of people to frame if he was ever discovered. At that moment, Father Callahan's phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize, but he decided to answer. Hello? Father Callahan, this is Chief Palmer from your old town. I'm calling because we received information that 3 dangerous fugitives may be at your church. Everyone's heart stopped. Carmela signaled for the priest to deny it, but he hesitated. What fugitives, Chief? A woman involved with drug trafficking, a nun who abandoned her order to help criminals, and a child who was used in extortion schemes. They are very dangerous and must be handed over to the authorities immediately. Wren snatched the phone from the priest's hands before anyone could stop her. Chief Palmer, this is Wren. Do you remember me? There was a surprised pause on the line. Wren? Girl, where are you? We've been looking for you for days. Silas told us you were kidnapped. Silas lied. I ran away because he was trying to hurt me just like he did to my mother. Wren, you don't understand. Silas is the one who's helping us find you. He offered to pay a reward to anyone who brings information about your whereabouts. Chief, you're being deceived. Silas is a criminal. I have proof of all the crimes he committed. Girl, you're too young to understand these things. Silas is a respected man in our town. It was then that Wren made the riskiest decision of her life. Chief, if you really want to protect me, meet with me personally, alone, without telling Silas. I'll show you the evidence I have against him. Where? At Father Callahan's church in Phoenix, but you have to come alone, and you can't tell anyone. If Silas finds out where I am before you get here, he'll kill me. The call was disconnected, and everyone looked at Wren as if she had lost her mind. Wren, what have you done? Carmela asked desperately. I bet everything on a single card, the girl replied. Chief Palmer is honest, but he's being manipulated. If I can show him the evidence before Silas finds out, he can become our most powerful ally. And if you can't... Wren looked out the office window, observing the quiet streets of the neighborhood. Then at least we tried to do the right thing until the end. The 2 hours following the call to Chief Palmer were the most tense that anyone in the small church had ever experienced. Father Callahan cancelled all the day's activities and locked the doors, keeping only a side entrance open for the expected arrival of the chief. Carmela couldn't stand still, pacing back and forth, while Wren meticulously organized the evidence she would show Palmer. Honey, I still think we should have gone straight to the prosecutor's office, Carmela said for the 10th time, betting on the honesty of a man who's already been deceived by Silas. Mom, Chief Palmer has known our town for 20 years. He's seen how Silas destroyed other people, but he never had proof. If I can show him that Silas is capable of lying about me, he'll start questioning all the other stories he's heard. Sister Hope was in constant contact by phone with Attorney Holloway, who was coordinating the arrest operation from the prosecutor's office. Patricia, has the arrest warrant been issued yet? Yes, but we're waiting for the right moment to execute it. If Silas suspects anything and runs, it could take weeks to find him again. And Bennett? He was released an hour ago. He's on his way to Phoenix to provide additional testimony. He insisted on coming personally to thank you. Wren looked up from the documents she was organizing. Is he okay? Physically, yes, but emotionally shaken. Spending 3 days in jail unjustly for crimes he didn't commit, accused of kidnapping you. It was very difficult for him. When this is all over, I want to apologize to him personally. Wren, you didn't do anything wrong. If anyone should apologize, it's the men who used your situation to hurt him. It was then that Father Callahan waved from the window. There's a police car arriving. It seems to be just the chief. As agreed, Chief Palmer got out of the official car alone, looking around with the caution of someone who wasn't completely comfortable with the situation. He was a burly man of 55, with a grey mustache and tired eyes that had seen too much during his police career. Father Callahan greeted him at the side entrance. Chief, welcome. They're waiting in my office. When Palmer entered the small office and saw Wren sitting calmly at the table, surrounded by organized documents, his expression softened. No matter what Silas had said about the girl, there was just a 4-year-old child who had spent months living on the streets. Wren, are you okay? Everyone in town was worried about you. I'm fine, Chief. Better than I would have been if I had let Silas find me. Palmer sat down in a chair in front of the table, his eyes scanning the scattered documents. Girl, you said you have evidence against Silas. What kind of evidence? Wren began strategically, first showing the least compromising evidence. These are photos I took of documents I found in his office trash. False contracts, altered receipts, proof of irregular payments. Palmer examined the images, clearly surprised by the quality and organization of the material. How did a 4-year-old child get all this? Because my mother taught me to always pay attention to details, and because I spent months collecting evidence against him. Why? What did Silas do to you? It was then that Carmela spoke up. Chief, I can answer that question. Palmer turned and saw a woman he took a few seconds to recognize. Carmela? Carmela Ferreira? But you had disappeared. I was forced to disappear, Chief, by him. Carmela pointed to a photo of Silas. For 2 years, I worked as a maid in his house. During those 2 years, he physically assaulted me, sexually violated me, and when he found out I was pregnant, he threatened to kill me if I told anyone. Palmer's face paled. Carmela, why didn't you ever report it? Because he said he had friends in the police who would have me arrested as crazy or addicted if I tried to accuse him, and because he threatened to hurt Wren if I said anything. Wren picked up a specific envelope and handed it to the chief. Here's the proof of what he did to my mother. Palmer opened the envelope and found photos that made him close his eyes in disgust. They were images of Carmela, with bruises, injuries, clearly the result of systematic aggression. There were also audio recordings where Silas's voice was clearly recognizable, making explicit threats. "My God," murmured the chief. "How did you get these recordings?" "My mother started recording the assaults when she realized he wasn't going to stop. She hid everything in a secret box, thinking she might use it as proof someday." Palmer was visibly shaken, but Wren wasn't finished yet. "Chief, there's more, much more." For the next hour, Wren systematically presented all the evidence she had collected. Documents showing how Harvey had been falsifying reports from Bennett's company for years, compromising recordings of conversations between Silas and other businessmen about corruption schemes, and most importantly, the recording she had made at the police station where Silas lied blatantly about Bennett. When he heard his own voice on the recording, believing Silas's lies, Palmer covered his face with his hands. "Wren, I believed him. I arrested an innocent man because I believed his lies. You're not to blame, Chief. Silas deceived many people for a long time. But I'm a police officer. I should have investigated better before arresting Bennett." Sister Hope spoke up. "Chief, the important thing now is to correct the error. This evidence can not only free Bennett definitively, but also ensure that Silas pays for all the crimes he has committed." Palmer stood up and walked to the window, clearly processing everything he had seen and heard. "Wren, do you understand that with this evidence, Silas can be sentenced to decades in prison?" "I understand. And that's exactly what I want. But do you also understand that when he finds out that it was you who gathered all this evidence, he'll do anything to get revenge? That's why I need you to help me. I need you to arrest him before he finds out." Palmer turned to face the girl. "Wren, there's something you need to know. When I left town to come here, I left orders for no one to contact Silas about my trip. But I also didn't tell anyone where I was coming. Why? Because after our phone conversation, I began to suspect that maybe you were right about him, and if you were right, then I couldn't trust anyone else on my team." Carmela felt an enormous relief. "Does that mean he doesn't know where we are?" "Not yet. But it also means I have very little time to act. If I take too long to return, he'll start to suspect." Wren picked up her backpack and began to put all the evidence in it. "Then we're going with you. Now." "Where to?" "Back to our town. We're going to deliver all this evidence to the Phoenix police and the prosecutor's office at the same time, and we're going to do it before Silas suspects anything." Palmer hesitated. "Wren, if something goes wrong along the way—" "Nothing's going to go wrong, because this time I'm sure I'm on the side of the right people." It was then that Sister Hope's phone rang. It was Attorney Holloway, and her voice was filled with urgency. "Marcia, something very serious has happened. Silas has disappeared." "What do you mean, disappeared?" "Our team went to his house to execute the arrest warrant, but he wasn't there. The neighbors said they saw a black van leaving his garage about an hour ago, loaded with suitcases." Everyone's heart stopped. If Silas had fled, all the evidence in the world would be useless. "There's more," Attorney Holloway continued. "We received information that he may be heading to Phoenix. Our informants say that he somehow found out that you're here." Wren stood up abruptly. "How could he have found out?" "We don't know, but it doesn't matter how. The important thing is that he's coming here, probably with other men, and he clearly doesn't intend to surrender peacefully. Chief Palmer grabbed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Chief Palmer. I need immediate backup at Father Callahan's church, Jardim, America neighborhood. Possible threat of an armed and dangerous man heading to this location." "Negative, Chief. We have no units available in the capital. You can try the local PD." Palmer turned off the radio in frustration. "We don't have time to ask for help from the Phoenix PD. If Silas is really coming here..." It was then that Wren did something that no one expected. She picked up the phone and called a number she knew by heart. "Hello, Clint? This is Wren. I really need your help. Now." 20 minutes later, 3 large trucks stopped in front of the church. Clint got out of the first one, accompanied by 5 other truckers he had called on the radio. They were all big men, used to dealing with difficult situations on the road. "Wren, what's going on?" Clint asked. "Silas found out where we are and is coming here. He's not coming alone, and he's not coming to talk." Clint looked at the other truckers. "Guys, remember what we talked about Silas Crane, about how he cheated several of us over the years?" Everyone nodded. Silas had a terrible reputation among the area's haulers. "Well," Clint continued, "the time has come for us to settle the score with him." Wren was about to experience the most dangerous moments of her life, but for the first time since it all began, she wasn't alone. She had by her side her mother, a courageous nun, an honest chief who had finally discovered the truth, a kind priest, and a group of working men who had also been victims of Silas's greed. The final battle was about to begin, and this time Wren knew she was on the stronger side. The midday sun beat down on the quiet streets of the Jardim, America neighborhood when 2 black vans stopped 2 blocks from Father Callahan's church. Silas Crane got out of the first van, accompanied by 4 men who clearly weren't police officers. They were hired thugs he kept on his payroll for extreme situations. "Remember," Silas said, adjusting the expensive suit that contrasted with the violence of his intentions, "the girl has information that can destroy me. We can't let her leave here alive." One of the men, a tall, thin guy with scars on his face, checked his gun. "And the others? The woman? The nun?" "Accomplices. They know too much." Silas took a phone out of his pocket. "Harvey, are you in position?" From the second van, Harvey Davies answered by cell phone. "I am, Silas, but I don't like this. Killing a child..." "Harvey, that child has destroyed years of our work. She has evidence of all our business dealings. If we don't act now, we'll spend the rest of our lives in jail." "What if someone sees? What if there are witnesses?" "That's why I chose this time. Everyone's having lunch. The streets are empty. We go in, solve the problem, and leave. In 2 hours, we'll be on the road to Mexico." Inside the church, Wren watched through a crack in the curtain. Her trained eyes immediately identified the suspicious vans parked down the street. "They've arrived," she announced calmly. 2 vans, at least 6 men. Silas is in charge." Clint positioned himself near the main entrance. "How many exits does this church have, Father?" 3. The main one, a side one that leads to the backyard, and one in the back that leads directly to the back street." "Perfect." Clint turned to the other truckers. "John and Mark, you stay at the back exit. Robert and Anthony at the side. Zay and I will stay here in the front with the chief." Chief Palmer carried his service weapon, but was visibly nervous. "Clint, these men aren't common thieves. They're dangerous and probably well armed. We know how to defend ourselves too," Clint replied, "and we have something they don't. We're fighting for a just cause." Carmela hugged Wren protectively. "Honey, if something goes wrong, you run to the back exit and don't look back, understand? I'm not leaving you alone, Mom. Wren, you've already done your part. You gathered the evidence, you convinced the chief, you brought help. Now let the adults handle it." Sister Hope was on the phone with Attorney Holloway. "Patricia, they've arrived. You need to send reinforcements now." "I've already sent them, Marcia, but it will take at least 15 minutes for them to get there. Can you protect yourselves until then?" "We'll try." Outside, Silas and his men approached the church. He had spent his entire life manipulating situations through money and influence, but now he was reduced to brute violence, and that made him even more dangerous. "Father Callahan!" Silas shouted when he reached the main door. "Open this door! I know you're in there!" Father Callahan answered through the closed door. "This is a house of God, Silas. If you want to come in, leave your weapons outside." "I'm not here to pray, Father. I'm here to get what's mine. Wren doesn't belong to you. The girl has things she stole from me, documents, photos. I want everything back." It was then that Chief Palmer made a courageous decision. He opened the church door, keeping his weapon pointed down, and faced Silas face to face. "Silas Crane, you are under arrest for corruption, extortion, sexual assault, and conspiracy to frame innocent people." Silas laughed disdainfully. "Palmer, you don't understand the situation. I'm not the man you used to know. I have nothing left to lose." "There's always something to lose, Silas. Your dignity, for example." "Dignity doesn't pay lawyers or buy a fake passport." Silas signaled to his men, who spread out around the church. "Last chance, Palmer. Hand over the girl and the documents, and everyone gets out of here alive." "It's not going to happen." That's when the situation exploded. One of Silas's henchmen tried to force his way through the side door, but was confronted by Robert, who knocked him down with a well-aimed punch. The sound of the fight alerted everyone else, and the church quickly turned into a battlefield. Silas drew a pistol, but Chief Palmer was faster, pointing his service weapon directly at the corrupt businessman's chest. "Drop the gun, Silas." "You're not going to shoot me, Palmer. You don't have the guts. Try me." Meanwhile, Harvey was trying to enter through the back of the church, but he was intercepted by John and Mark. The accountant, less prepared for physical confrontation than the thugs, was easily subdued and immobilized. "I got one," John shouted. "It's the accountant you guys talked about." Inside the church, Wren remained calm despite the chaos around her. "Father Callahan, where are the bells?" "In the tower. Why?" "If I can ring the bells, everyone in the neighborhood will hear. They'll come to see what's happening." "Wren, it's too dangerous to go up there now." But the girl had already run off toward the stairs, leading to the church tower. Carmela tried to follow her, but Sister Hope stopped her. "Let her go. Wren knows what she's doing." Silas, realizing that he was losing control of the situation, made a desperate decision. Instead of continuing to confront Palmer, he ran toward the interior of the church, chasing Wren. "The girl is mine," he shouted, climbing the stairs of the tower 2 steps at a time. Palmer and Clint ran after him, but Silas had gained a few seconds' head start. When they reached the tower, they found Silas pointing the gun at Wren, who was next to the large bell. "It's over, girl," Silas said, panting. "You destroyed my life. Now I'm going to destroy yours." Wren looked at him without showing fear. "Silas, you destroyed your own life when you decided to hurt innocent people. Childish philosophy isn't going to save you now." "You're right," Wren said calmly, "but this will." She pulled the bell rope with all her might. The thunderous sound echoed throughout the neighborhood, breaking the tranquility of the afternoon and alerting dozens of people who began to come out of their homes to see what was happening. Silas, surprised by the deafening noise, lost concentration for a second. It was enough time for Chief Palmer to climb the last flight of stairs and disarm the businessman with a precise movement. "Silas Crane, you are officially under arrest." But Silas didn't give up easily. Even disarmed, he tried to push Wren off the tower. The girl dodged, but she lost her balance and stood dangerously close to the edge. It was Clint who saved the situation, grabbing Silas by the coat and pulling him away from Wren. "Your days of hurting children are over." Outside, the residents of the neighborhood gathered in front of the church, attracted by the sound of the bells and the shouts. Among them, several recognized Silas when he was led down the stairs, handcuffed and defeated. "It's Silas Crane," commented one woman. "What was he doing here?" "Trying to hurt a child," replied Father Callahan, who came down from the tower carrying Wren in his arms. but God protected our little warrior. 15 minutes later, 3 military police cars and 2 from the prosecutor's office arrived at the scene. Attorney Holloway got out of one of them, accompanied by other prosecutors and technicians specializing in evidence collection. "Where's the evidence?" was her first question. Wren, still in the priest's arms, pointed to her backpack. "Everything's here. All the original evidence." "And Silas?" "Arrested," replied Chief Palmer with satisfaction, "along with Harvey and 3 thugs. A 4th man escaped, but we already have his license plate." Attorney Holloway approached Wren. "Honey, do you have any idea what you accomplished today?" "Did I? Justice for you, for your mother, for Bennett, and for all the other people Silas hurt over the years." Carmela hugged her daughter, tears streaming down her face. "It's over, Wren. It's finally over." "It's not over yet, Mom," Wren said with her characteristic seriousness. "Now the good part needs to begin." "What good part?" "The part where we both learn to be a real family." At that moment, a familiar car arrived at the church. It was Bennett, who had driven straight from his town as soon as he heard about the confrontation. When he got out of the car and saw Wren safe and sound, his eyes filled with tears. "Wren!" he called, running towards the girl. "Mr. Sterling!" She broke free from the priest's arms and ran to meet him. The businessman knelt down and hugged the girl who had saved his life, and then risked everything to save his as well. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for not giving up on me. I promised you were safe with me, and I always keep my promises." Later, when all the police procedures were completed and Silas and his accomplices were being transported to prison, Wren sat on the steps of the church next to her mother, watching the activity on the street. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course, honey. What are we going to do now?" Carmela thought for a moment. "Well, first, we're going to find a house for us to live in together. Then you're going to school like every child should go. And little by little, we're going to build our new life. And Mr. Sterling, what about him? Is he going to continue being our friend?" Carmela smiled, looking at Bennett, who was talking to the prosecutors, but kept his eyes always on them. "I think so, Wren. I think we've created bonds that will last forever." Wren nodded, satisfied. For the first time in many months, she could imagine a future where she wouldn't need to hide, wouldn't need to be afraid, wouldn't need to fight alone against bad people. Finally, at 4 years old, Wren could just be a child. A week after the arrest of Silas and his accomplices, Wren found herself in a place she never imagined she'd be. Attorney Holloway's office, at the prosecutor's office, no longer as a desperate fugitive, but as the main witness in one of the biggest corruption cases that Arizona had ever seen. "Wren, I need you to tell me a few more details about the documents you found," Attorney Holloway said, spreading papers on the table. "Our investigation has discovered that Silas's corruption network was much larger than we imagined." "How much larger?" asked Carmela, who now accompanied her daughter in all legal proceedings. "We found evidence that he had similar schemes in at least 4 cities in the region, always using the same pattern. He identifies vulnerable people, exploits them, and then discards them when they no longer serve his purposes." Wren leafed through a photo album that the prosecutor had prepared. "Attorney Holloway, how many people did he hurt? Based on the evidence you brought and the new investigations, we estimate that at least 20 families were directly harmed by his schemes. Some lost jobs, others were blackmailed, and some, like your mother, suffered physical violence." Carmela held her daughter's hand. "Wren, you saved many more people than you realize." It was then that Attorney Holloway revealed something that would completely change Wren's perspective on her entire journey. "Wren, during our investigation, we discovered something about Mr. Sterling's company that you need to know." "What was it?" "Silas didn't choose to blackmail Bennett by chance. 5 years ago, when your mother still worked for him, Bennett had started a discreet investigation into irregularities in public contracts in the region. He suspected that some businessmen were overcharging for projects in the city." Wren became more attentive. And Silas was among those businessmen. Exactly. Bennett was getting close to the truth when your mother was forced to leave town. His investigations stopped because he lost access to internal information that your mother, unknowingly, was providing. Carmela paled. How so, providing information? When you cleaned the offices, including Bennett's, you occasionally saw documents and heard conversations. It wasn't conscious espionage, but Silas discovered that you knew things that could compromise him. That's why he kicked me out of town, Carmela murmured. And that's why Harvey was instructed to infiltrate Bennett's company as an accountant. It was a long-term plan to control and, if necessary, destroy the only businessman who represented a real threat to Silas's business. Wren processed this information in silence for a few minutes. Does that mean that when I saved Mr. Sterling from the fire, it wasn't just a coincidence? Technically, it was a coincidence, Attorney Holloway replied. But symbolically, well, you saved the man who was trying to get justice for the crimes committed against your family. At that moment, the office door opened and Bennett entered, carrying a cardboard box. Attorney Holloway, I brought all the documents I managed to recover from the files that Harvey tried to destroy. Mr. Sterling, exclaimed Wren, getting up to greet him. Hi, little warrior, he said, smiling. How are you adjusting to life in Phoenix? Good. Mom got a job at a bakery, and I'm starting school next week. That's great, and you're not living on the streets anymore, right? No. Now I have my own room, with a real bed and a window that overlooks a garden. Bennett became visibly emotional. During the last week, he had thought constantly about the radical transformation of Wren's life, from an abandoned child fighting for survival to a girl with a family and a future. Bennett, Attorney Holloway said, I was just telling them about the investigation you had started 5 years ago. Ah, yes. Bennett turned to Carmela. Carmela, I need to apologize to you. If I had been more persistent at the time, maybe I could have prevented Silas from doing what he did to you. Mr. Sterling, you're not to blame for anything. Silas was very powerful. He had a lot of influence. One person alone couldn't bring him down, but a 4-year-old child did it, Attorney Holloway observed with admiration. I didn't do it alone, Wren corrected. I needed help from everyone, from Sister Hope, from Clint, from Chief Palmer, from Father Callahan, from my mother, from Mr. Sterling, from you. Wren, Bennett interrupted, can I ask you a personal question? You can. When you saved me from that fire, did you already know who I was? Wren hesitated, clearly debating internally whether she should tell the complete truth. I did. How? Because my mother always talked about you. She said you were a good man, honest, that you treated your employees well. When I saw you in danger, I remembered what she said. Carmela was surprised. Wren, you never told me that. Because I was afraid you'd think I was lying. Who would believe that a 4-year-old child could plan something? But you really planned everything, didn't you? Attorney Holloway asked. Not everything. But after I saved Mr. Sterling and saw that he was really a good person, I started to think that maybe he could help me get justice for my mother. Bennett sat down in the chair next to Wren. Why didn't you tell me this from the beginning? Because first, I needed to be sure I could trust you, and because I knew that if I told you that my mother had worked for you, it would complicate everything even more. You're right. I probably would have been confused and maybe wouldn't have acted the right way. It was then that Wren made a revelation that surprised everyone. Mr. Sterling, there's one thing that Attorney Holloway hasn't discovered yet about the investigation you were doing 5 years ago. What? Wren took an envelope from her backpack that she had kept throughout her journey. My mother didn't just clean offices. She also photocopied important documents and kept them. How so? Carmela explained. I knew that Silas was dangerous. So I started making copies of everything I saw that was suspicious, thinking that someday I might need to protect myself. And they included documents from my office. Yes, Wren replied, handing the envelope to Bennett. Your investigation was more advanced than you imagined. Mom photographed contracts, emails, reports, everything that could help. Bennett opened the envelope and found copies of documents he had been looking for years. My God. With this, I can reopen the investigation and go much deeper than was possible at the time. That's wonderful, exclaimed Attorney Holloway. With this additional evidence, we can not only ensure Silas's conviction, but also recover public money that was stolen and compensate the victims of his schemes. Carmela became emotional. You mean that all those nights I spent copying documents in secret, afraid of being discovered, were really worth it? More than worth it, Bennett replied. You helped preserve evidence that can result in the return of millions of dollars to the public coffers. Wren smiled, seeing the pride on her mother's face. Mom, you've always been a warrior. You just didn't know it. At that moment, Sister Hope entered the office carrying a bouquet of flowers. Sorry to interrupt, but I brought a surprise for Wren. What surprise? Several people from your old town sent letters and gifts for you. When they heard the whole story, they were impressed by your courage. Sister Hope handed a stack of envelopes to Wren. Patty from the bakery sent a cake. Chief Palmer wrote an official letter recommending you for a Civil Courage Medal, and even the mayor wants to meet you personally. Wren looked at all the gifts around her, and then at the letters in her hands. I didn't do anything special. I just tried to do the right thing. Wren, said Bennett, doing the right thing when it's difficult and dangerous is exactly what makes a person special. And now? She asked. Now that Silas is in jail and the whole truth has been discovered, what's going to happen? Attorney Holloway smiled. Now you're going to have the most precious thing a child can have, a normal childhood. You're going to go to school, you're going to play, you're going to make friends, you're going to grow up in safety. But I'm going to keep being smart and brave. Of course you are, Carmela replied, hugging her daughter. Those qualities are part of who you are. The difference is that now you won't need to use them to survive, but to grow and help other people. Bennett stood up. Wren, can I ask you a favor? You can. When you grow up and become a woman, I want you to consider working with me. I need honest and brave people in my business. Why only when I grow up? Can't I help now? Everyone laughed at Wren's typical response. Now you need to be a child, said Bennett. But I promise there will always be a place for you in my company, if that's what you want. What if I want to be a prosecutor like Attorney Holloway? Then I'll sponsor your studies, replied Bennett without hesitation. What if I want to be a nun like Sister Hope? Then I'll support your vocation, said Carmela. What if I want to be a trucker like Clint? Then you'll be the smartest trucker in the USA, Attorney Holloway laughed. Wren was silent for a few seconds, processing all the possibilities that lay before her. You know what I really want to be when I grow up? What? Everyone asked in unison. I want to be someone who helps children like me. Children who are alone, afraid, without anyone to protect them. The silence that followed was filled with emotion. Everyone understood that Wren's extraordinary journey had made her not only a survivor, but someone with a purpose in life, defined from a very young age. Then, that's what you're going to be, said Bennett finally. A protector of children. And we're all going to help you prepare for that mission. As they left the prosecutor's office that afternoon, Wren walked between her mother and Bennett, carrying the letters from her admirers in one hand and holding Carmela's hand with the other. For the first time in her life, she didn't need to look over her shoulder, didn't need to map escape routes, didn't need to hide. Finally, she was free to be just an extraordinary child with a bright future ahead. 6 months after the arrest of Silas and Harvey, the small town of Havenwood was experiencing a period of renewal that no one had imagined possible. With the breakup of the corruption network, new investments arrived in the region. Honest businessmen could compete on fair terms, and several families who had been harmed by the criminal schemes received financial compensation that changed their lives. On a sunny morning in March, Wren was preparing for a very special day. At 5 years old, she had celebrated her birthday the previous month with a party that brought together all the important people in her journey. She was about to participate in a ceremony that would officially mark the closing of one chapter of her life and the beginning of another. "Ren, are you ready?" Carmela called from the next room. "I am, Mom," she replied, adjusting the light blue dress that Bennett had bought especially for the occasion. In recent months, their lives had been completely transformed. Carmela had gotten a job as the manager of a bakery in Phoenix, a job that made her feel useful and respected. They lived in a small but cozy house, with a backyard where Ren could play freely and receive frequent visits from Caramello, the mixed-breed dog that now had a permanent home with them. Ren, in turn, had adapted to school with the ease of someone who had always possessed above-average intelligence. Her teachers were constantly impressed with her learning ability, and above all, with her emotional maturity to deal with conflicts and help colleagues who were going through difficulties. "Mom," Ren said while brushing her hair, "do you think it's going to hurt?" "What, honey?" "Talking about everything that happened in front of so many people." That day, the official closing ceremony of the case against Silas Crane and his accomplices would take place. The court had decided to hold a public session where the victims could talk about the impact of the crimes on their lives, and Ren had been invited to give a special testimony. "It's going to hurt a little in your heart," Carmela admitted. "But it's a good pain, a healing pain. Like when we clean a wound, it hurts at the time, but it's necessary to heal properly. And then we won't need to talk about bad people anymore. Then we can focus only on the good people, who are much more numerous than you imagine." An hour later, mother and daughter arrived at the Phoenix courthouse, where a crowd of journalists, authorities, and ordinary people who had been touched by Ren's story had already gathered. Bennett was waiting for them at the entrance, accompanied by Sister Hope, Father Callahan, Chief Palmer, and even Clint, who had closed his trucker stop for a day to be present. "Ren," Bennett greeted, kneeling to be at her height. "How are you feeling?" "A little nervous, but also happy. Today is the day that everything is officially over, isn't it?" "It is." Silas was sentenced to 25 years in prison, Harvey to 15, and all the other accomplices also received appropriate sentences. "And they won't be able to hurt anyone anymore?" "Never again." The group entered the courthouse and headed to the main hall, where hundreds of people awaited the start of the ceremony. Attorney Holloway, now promoted to Deputy Attorney General due to the success of the case, coordinated the final procedures. "Ren, honey," she said, approaching, "are you sure you want to speak today? I can read your statement if you prefer." "No, Doctor. I want to speak myself. I have important things to say." "And what do you want to say?" Ren thought for a moment. "I want to say that even when everything seems lost, there is always hope, and that good people exist everywhere, we just need to look for them right." As the ceremony began, the judge responsible for the case, Dr. Eleanor Vance, gave a summary of the crimes judged and the sentences applied. Then she invited the victims who wished to give their testimonies. Carmela was the first to speak. With a firm but emotional voice, she spoke about the years of abuse and fear, but mainly about how her daughter's courage had transformed her pain into strength to start over. "Silas Crane took away my dignity, my self-esteem, and almost took away my daughter," she said. "But he couldn't take away our ability to love and fight for what is right. Today, I am a free woman. My daughter is a safe child, and that is the greatest victory we could have." Then it was Bennett's turn. The businessman spoke about how he had been manipulated and almost destroyed, but also about how his meeting with Ren had changed his perspective on social responsibility and the importance of protecting the most vulnerable. "Ren saved me from a literal fire," he said, "but she also saved me from a figurative fire, the fire of indifference, selfishness, isolation. She reminded me that our humanity is measured by how we treat those who most need help." Finally, it was Wren's turn. She went up to the podium with firm steps, adjusted the microphone to her height, and looked at the audience full of attentive faces. "My name is Wren. I'm 5 years old, and for a long time I thought the world was a very bad place," she began, her clear voice echoing through the silent hall. "When my mother left and I was alone on the streets, I thought all people were bad, that no one cared about me, that I was going to have to fight alone forever." Many people in the audience wiped away tears discreetly. "But then I discovered something very important. There are bad people in the world, it's true, but they are few. Most people are good, but sometimes they're afraid to help, because the bad people are louder." Wren paused, looking directly at where her friends were sitting. "Patty from the bakery always left good food in the trash for me. Sister Hope listened to me when no one else would. Clint took me away from danger. Father Callahan gave me shelter. Chief Palmer chose to believe me even when it seemed impossible. Attorney Holloway fought for justice. And Mr. Sterling taught me that saving someone isn't something you do just once. It's something you do every day, with care and affection." Her voice trembled slightly, but she continued firmly. "Silas Crane and people like him want us to believe that we are too small and too weak to make a difference. But that's a lie. I'm 5 years old, and I managed to bring down a powerful man because I wasn't really alone. I had a family that I chose, and that chose me back." Wren turned to where Carmela was. "My mother has always been brave, even when she was scared. She taught me that strength isn't not being afraid, but doing the right thing even when you are afraid." Then she looked at the whole group of people who had become her extended family. "I learned that family isn't just who you're born with. Family is who stays with you when things get tough. It's who protects you, who believes in you, who helps you be better." Her voice gained strength for the final words. "I want all the children who are watching to know that no matter how alone you feel, there's always someone willing to help. You just need to be brave enough to ask for help and smart enough to recognize who really wants the best for you. And to the adults, I want to say that sometimes the person who needs you the most might be very small or very different, or be in a place you didn't expect. But if you pay attention, if you really care, you can save a life. You can change everything." The silence in the hall was absolute. Many people were crying openly, touched by the unexpected wisdom of that extraordinary girl. "Lastly," Wren said, "I want to thank Silas Crane." The phrase caused general surprise in the audience. "I know this may sound strange, but I want to thank him because he taught me that even in the darkest situations, we can always choose to be light. He chose to be darkness, and that hurt a lot of people. But all the good people I met chose to be light, and that's why we're here today, together, free and happy. He tried to destroy us, but he only managed to strengthen us. He tried to separate us, but he only managed to unite us more. He tried to silence us, but our voice today echoes throughout the state of Arizona, showing that the truth always wins in the end." Wren took a deep breath for the final words. "My story isn't about a girl who suffered. It's about a girl who discovered that she was never alone, that she found an amazing family, and that she learned that doing the right thing is always worth it, even when it's hard. And now I'm going to use everything I've learned to help other children who are where I was, because no one should go through this alone, and because everyone deserves a family that truly loves them." When Wren finished her speech, the hall erupted in applause that lasted for several minutes. People stood up, cried, hugged each other, touched by the strength and hope that emanated from that small child who had become a symbol of courage and determination. Dr. Eleanor Vance, visibly emotional, declared the case officially closed, congratulated all the victims for their courage in seeking justice, and above all, honored Wren as the smallest heroine and the greatest lesson in humanity that the court had ever witnessed. After the ceremony, as the group gathered in the square in front of the courthouse, Wren ran across the lawn, finally free to be just a 5-year-old child. Caramello had been brought by Carmela and ran alongside her, barking happily. "Mom!" she shouted, stopping in front of Carmela. "Is it really over? Can we be happy now?" "It's really over, honey, and we can be happy forever." Bennett approached them. "Carmela, Wren, I'd like to make an official invitation." "What invitation?" Carmela asked. "I want you to move back to our town. I'm going to open a social program in my company to help vulnerable families, and I'd like Carmela to coordinate the project. And Wren can study at the best school in the area." "And will I be able to help other children?" Wren asked immediately. "It will be a fundamental part of the program. You'll help identify children who need help and create strategies to protect them." Wren looked at her mother, who smiled and nodded. "I accept, as long as Caramello can come too." "Of course he can," Bennett laughed. Sister Hope joined the group. "And I've already talked to the Mother Superior. I'm going to be transferred to your town to coordinate a new child protection program in partnership with the city government." "Does that mean we're all going to stay together?" Wren asked, barely able to contain her happiness. "Forever," replied Father Callahan, who had also approached. "Families of the heart never really separate." As the sun set over Phoenix, painting the sky with golden and pink tones, Wren was surrounded by all the people she loved, planning a bright future where her experience would be used to protect other children from going through what she had gone through. She had started as an abandoned girl, fighting alone for survival on the streets of a small town. She ended as a beloved child, surrounded by a chosen family, with a clear purpose in life and the certainty that no matter how dark the night, there is always a new morning waiting to be born. And in the heart of a 5-year-old girl who had changed so many lives, shone the simplest and most powerful truth in the world. Love always wins, hope never dies, and doing the right thing is always worth it. Finally, Wren was free to fly.